very good to have you all with us this evening. And it is now my pleasure to welcome Stephanie Smith. As president of the BC General Employees Union, Stephanie represents more than 82,000 members, a majority of them women, who work in practically every community and every economic sector in BC. In 2014, Stephanie became the first woman elected president of the BCGEU, and she was acclaimed to a second term in 2017 and to a third term in June of 2021. Before her historic election as president, Stephanie served in various other elected positions in the BCGEU, including managing the union's finances as treasurer, guiding policies as part of the provincial executive, and bargaining collective agreements with employers. An early childhood educator by profession, Stephanie's career as a union activist began as a new ECE in New Zealand and continued when she moved back to Canada. Stephanie is a respected voice for working people and the labor movement in the media, as well as on government task forces, committees, and working groups. Stephanie is a renowned advocate for workers' rights, public services, and unionization, and she's committed to promoting reconciliation, equity, and inclusion in everything she does. Please join me in welcoming Stephanie Smith.
Thank you so very much, Michelle, for that introduction. And I'd also like to thank Elder Doris for her incredibly powerful and inspirational words. Really moved me. I also want to start my remarks off in a good way by acknowledging that I'm joining you this evening from the traditional, unceded ancestral territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam peoples in what is now known as Vancouver. Grounding ourselves in the history of the places we occupy is a small but powerful step toward life. And everyone joining us tonight knows that allies are critical to social justice work. Whether your work is in gender equity, decolonization and reconciliation, anti-racism, workers' rights, something else, or all of the above, cultivating allies is part of your work. On behalf of the BCGU's more than 82,000 members across the province, let me say how proud we are to be one of West Coast Leaf's allies. The BCGU is one of the BC's largest, fastest growing, and most diverse labor unions. As our union has grown in numbers and influence, we've remained committed to social justice, human rights, and equality, not just for our members and not just in workplaces, but for all people everywhere. It's that commitment, a commitment we share with everyone here tonight, that brings the BCGU back to this event every year. And that brings me to my official duty to introduce this year's keynote speaker. Over the years, I've been honored to introduce some exceptional people at this event, gifted storytellers with unique perspectives and the power to inspire people to action. This year is no different. Leah Lakshmi Piepzna-Samarasinha is a non-binary femme writer and activist in the disability and transformative justice cultural movement. They are the author or co-editor of 9 books, including Beyond Survival, Strategies and Stories from the Transformative Justice Movement with Ajara Stickson, Body Map, Tongue Breaker, and Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice. Leah is a Lambda Award winner, a 2020 Disability Futures Fellow, and the 2020 Jean Cordova Award winner, honoring a lifetime of work documenting the complexities of queer experience. They are of Burgher and Tamil Sri Lankan, Irish and Galician Romani ascent, raised in Rust Belt, Central Massachusetts, and currently make their home in South Seattle, Duwamish territories. I am so excited to hear them speak, as I know you are. So please join me in welcoming Leah Lakshmi Piepzna-Samarasinha.
I thank you so much, Stephanie, for that warm welcome. And thank you, Raji. Thank you, Bezia. Thank you, everybody, for putting on this event. It's a real honor to be here. My name is Leah Lakshmi Piepzna-Samarasinha. And I will not do my entire ethnic background because Stephanie, you just did it in the bio really good. But I just wanted to say again, thank you, Elder Doris. As somebody who's, I'm going to get emotional, who a quarter of my ancestry is from near Lvov in Galician Ukraine. I have one of these scarves too, and I've been really moved by those stories of solidarity between Indigenous and Ukrainian women, and it made me go get out one of my own. So thank you. I don't know, when you guys emailed me 13 times being like, please come speak at our breakfast for dinner, I was like, I think you mean the other Leah with the really long name. I don't know. And I was like, I don't want to waste your time, and I want to offer you some stories and some dreams that might be useful. So I'm going to try and do that. But I want to ground myself also in the political lineage that I come from. So I ran away across the fake border in North Turtle Island when I was 21 in 1996, away from my abusive parents who were threatening to put me under conservatorship. And I found home in Toronto in the late 90s, where I was raised up by my real family of people fighting for social justice in so many different ways. And I want to start by naming them because they're the people who really grew me into whoever and whatever I am today. I was brought up in my 20s by people who were Canadian anarchists, land defenders, prison abolitionists who were coming out of the struggles for justice at the Prison for Women and other prisons across Turtle Island. I'm thinking about the queer women I knew who hung out at Sister Vision Press and Desh Pardesh, who are at club lights for queer people of color at the Red Spot. I'm thinking about the older revolutionaries at Prison News Service who had been fighting for the rights of prisoners and for prison abolition since the early 1980s, before abolition was ever something we could think of that would be a word on the front page of the New York Times or the Globe and Mail. People thought we were crazy, and a lot of us were. I'm thinking about, speaking of crazy people, as a crazy person myself, I'm thinking about everybody in the psychiatric survivor movement of Canada from the 70s on, people like Don Whites, Graham Bach, Bobby Nwagobo, many of whom are no longer here, but who are people who fought for the rights of people who've been locked up in psychiatric institutions as disabled people, to have control over our lives and destinies, and to have the right to live as people who aren't like neurotypical people, and to have our civil and human rights. There's more, I'll just name a few more. I really want to lift up sex work organizers at Maggie's and throughout Canada, and trans women revolutionaries like Mira Soleil Ross, Trish Salah, and Zandra McKay, who I'm so grateful I got to learn from as a tiny little, dumb little young activist. These are the people who raised me to be who I am today as a mixed race neurodiverse organizer and somebody who's been part of the disability justice and transformative justice movement. I don't know how you guys are feeling. I know that sometimes, right now as a 47-year-old, kind of cute, kind of haggard organizer, I'm so grateful for all the work we've done. And sometimes I'm also sitting here like, well, we all fought really hard, but I don't know if it's going to prevent World War V. And it's really hard to, figure out where a good place is in the middle of that reality sometimes. But one thing that I've learned a lot from all of the people who've taught me, and specifically from other disabled Black and Brown people, is the power of ancestry. And, in terms of ancestors who are not on this planet anymore, and people who are still alive, but, those movement spaces are from 20 years ago. It is so important for me to remember where I come from and to remember that we have been all making our way through the total devastation of settler colonization, anti-Black racism, ableism, transmisogyny, and genocide for a long, long time. And we have pulled off miracles. And we are so much bigger and smarter and more complicated than the forces of evil. One of my favorite ancestors is my friend and work wife, the brilliant disability justice organizer and writer, Stacey Park Milburn, who passed 2 years ago this spring. We met when she was 23 years old, I think in 2009, and we had 10 years together as queer, disabled Asian femmes being part of building the disability justice movement together. She was taken from us partly through medical gatekeeping due to ableism 2 years ago, when she could not get her cancer surgery that she needed because of racist and ableist medical gatekeeping. Having said that, she left an incredible legacy of creating disability justice worlds. And I wanted to read from a piece of writing called On the Ancestral Plane that she wrote a year before she died. Ancestorship, like love, is expansive, and it breaks man-made boundaries cast upon it, like the nuclear family model or these artificial nation-state borders. My ancestors are disabled people who lived looking out of institution windows, wanting so much more for themselves. It's because of them that I know that in reflecting on what is a good life, an opportunity to contribute is as important as receiving supports one needs. My ancestors are people torn from our homes, torn apart from loves and my people are, hold on, I'll get it. My ancestors are people torn apart from our homes by war and displacement. It's because of them I know the power of building home with whatever you have, wherever you are, whoever you're with. My ancestors are queers who lived in the American South, and it's because of them I understand the importance of relationships, place, and living life big, even and especially when it's dangerous. All of my ancestors knew longing. Longing is often our connecting place. I believe that our ancestors laugh, cry, hurt, rage, celebrate with us. Most importantly, I believe they learn as we are learning, just as we learn from them. We grow knowledge and movements with our ancestors, not separately. We demand and entice the world to change the way things have always been done with them. We change ourselves with them. They learn through us, and when we become ancestors, we will also continue to learn. And so I wanted to start by asking you to think about who are the ancestors that brought you to this moment in time, which is not going to come again. Who are the ancestors that brought you to this place of the work that you're trying to do to change the world? Who are the people who first told you that everything could be different? And you can think about them, you can drop their names in the chat, you can say their names to yourself, but I want you to know that they're close to you. And for me, that includes not just ancestors of blood, because like many of us, I wrote a piece once called My Ancestors Are Bitches, and a lot of them are, and some not in a good way. A lot of us come from complicated places of ancestry where we don't know our ancestors, if they were stolen from us, if we were stolen from them. Where some of our ancestors are people who caused violence, who, were abusive, racist, sexist, all the things, or who were hurt by systems of oppression, so they hurt us. So I really believe in calling on my chosen ancestors as well, and I've done that throughout my life in my work when I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm like, Leslie Feinberg, tell me how you were a trans Jewish communist revolutionary living with Lyme disease for the last 15 years of your life. Audre Lorde, tell me about what it was like to be a Black lesbian mother warrior poet healer who lived with cancer and who was born legally blind. Tell me your disabled Black and brown revolutionary stories, because we all know that we've pulled off a whole lot more than any of the powers that be ever thought that we could. And I know that when I start feeling despair or sadness or like, I have no idea, it is one of the most important things for me to know that I'm not alone in this. And to also think about what work I'm doing to be a good future ancestor, which is everything from the hard work to also embracing joy, love, pleasure, family making, all of the amulets of protection of my mixed race, brown, disabled femme self. Which y'all can do too. We can all do this, right? So, okay, while we're calling on the ancestors, I just want to say, so I also Googled, even though I've been doing these speeches for a long time, I Googled like, what's a really good way of doing a 25-minute speech? And there's just some dude who's like, you know, you got to put out your big idea, one big idea. And I was like, oh God, okay. But I thought about it and I was like, okay, you know, I think that we have one task in front of us, should we choose to accept it. And it's really simple and it's really complicated. And it's that I think that we are at a critical moment that we've been at for a while. And, you know, a lot of us have been working on this stuff for our whole lives, obviously. But I know that for me, I think that the last couple years have really asked us, okay, so you want to defund the courts and defund the cops, change the courts, defeat settler colonialism, save the world. Awesome. How are you going to do it? For real. And I know that for me, and this is the main reason why I was like, you sure you want me? You guys are lawyers. I'm coming to you. I wear a lot of hats. I don't have any hats on right now, but you know, metaphorical hats. But I have been working in what we call the transformative justice movement for over half my life. And simply put, it's a movement of people who are trying to create strategies that create justice, safety, and healing by and for survivors of violence without predominantly working with the state. We're not, you know, shaking our finger at anyone who does call the cops because they don't have a better option. But we were all survivors who are Black, Indigenous, and people of color who were like, you know, we wish the cops were the option, but it just actually never really works out. And mostly it ends up with violence towards us. So we're trying to figure out something else. We're trying to dream the next thing that's actually going to bring us home. Right? And I know that for me, as someone doing this work, the past couple of years, I'm like, my God, not only is abolition on the front cover of the New York Times, but there's been all of these pushes because of our labor to be like, okay, let's do something else. Let's put the money someplace else. Let's figure something else out. And it's really where the rubber hits the road of like, okay, you got a solution? You gonna keep me safe, my family safe, my loved ones safe, my kin safe? What is it? And I know that often I've been like, this is incredible, and God, if we mess this up, I mean, maybe there'll be some more chances, but there's so much at stake because we're trying to save everybody who's been harmed, who has not found safety in the system. And we're trying not to portray that the them that is us. And it's not like we don't know how we could do it, you know, but the pressure's on. So I think I've already said that I want to just say really briefly, it's important for me to say that transformative justice is not, to me and to the people I know doing this work, some kind of like fun idea we came up with because we thought theoretically it would be cute. We were all people who were like, I cannot go to the police because I'm a sex worker. I cannot go to the police because I'm a migrant. I cannot go to the police because of their hatred of Black and Indigenous women, non-binary, and trans people. I have complicated feelings about the person who harmed me because they are part of my community. And I want them to keep me safe. And also, I'm not sure if prison's going to do it. You know, like it's the $10 million question. I could do a greatest hits of laws that have been put through that have ended up being twisted against all of their good intentions to harm survivors, from, you know, south of the fake border, safer communities, which was a law that was passed 10 years ago under Obama, which mandated that during any domestic violence arrest, the immigration status of the people arrested be transmitted immediately to ICE. So you see thousands of survivors who are undocumented, who are in the immigration system being at huge risk because, you know, they're like, well, I'm more likely to be deported than to get safe, right? And I'm thinking about the moment in 1997 when my lover, who is a non-binary, child of immigrants, revolutionary person of color, when, you know, the neighbors in our shitty building called the cops on us because we were in a violent relationship. And they didn't ask either of us if we were safe. They asked me what my papers were, and they asked my ex, my partner at the time, about their probation status because they'd done time. There's a million stories like this, and they're not aberrations. They're really normal. And I could go on and on. And the project of replacing the state with something else is, of course, an ambitious one. This is my irony face. But I have a friend whose name is Shira Hassan, and she is a queer disabled Arab femme who co-founded a group called the Young Women's Empowerment Project, which, I think to date is one of the only groups that's led by young people in the sex trade and street economics. That was just like, we're going to put you in leadership, and we're not going to try and force you to exit before you get leadership. We're going to meet you where you are and really believe in you. And one thing that Shira said was, she was like, one of the places our struggles lies in is that our lands have been colonized, in so many different ways and stolen from us, whoever we are. In particular, Indigenous people on this land, of this land that we're meeting on. And she's like, there's ways that, our imaginations have also been taken from us, right? And she's like, some of our primary work, and she's like, it's so hard to remember when we're just fighting to keep people alive, and we're fighting to get somebody's welfare turned back on, we're fighting to get someone's divorce to go through. But she was like, our big work is actually to dream something bigger than just surviving. And it's so hard and it's so necessary. And that's, to me, that those dreams, those big dreams, are the quote unquote crazy work of transformative justice. And I want to say that, what that makes me think of is that transformative justice can be so many things. It can be something as small and huge as when you tell somebody to fuck off, sorry, I hope that's okay, I swear a lot, who's harassing your friend at the bus stop, to creating an entire alternative system of peer support, buy-in for people who are experiencing altered states of mental illness that doesn't rely on us being locked up. Again, we're halfway through, I've got a million things, I'm gonna throw a lot out. I'm thinking of my friend Ajaris' story about coming from people who are Black folks in Louisiana and talking to their mother, and their mom saying, well, yeah, when we were growing up, the cops were the Klan. They were the same thing. They still are. Whenever there was domestic violence, we didn't call the police. Like, the big guys in the neighborhood would come and talk to somebody, and it wasn't perfect, but we made it up. I think about the story that they shared where they're like, Black folks in the South have their own ambulance systems for most of the 20th century because of racism. We can actually create alternative systems. I think about Jane Doe, and the way that she sued the cops and all of her organizing to actually not say that carceral feminism is the answer that's going to get us free. I think about the work of places like Hollow Water and Indigenous communities all over doing the huge work of addressing childhood sexual abuse and family violence without relying predominantly on the prison system, and that huge, huge, huge spiritual work of that. I think of the stories of my friends in No More Silence, in particular my friend Audrey Huntley, talking about the ways as Indigenous women and Two-Spirit folks, they were using medicine and ceremony and their own relationships to find out where people had gone when the cops really didn't care. And where she was like, I helped find somebody. This is something in the book Ajaris and me edited that Audrey talked about, where she was like, yeah, we were trying to help somebody find their daughter, and who in the boarding house where she last was, who are they going to trust, the cops or me? They trusted me. They trusted me just going and being like, hey, give me this information. Our relationships are our strength. And I want to say that I believe in a diversity of tactics. It surprises people a lot of time because they're like, you're some weird aging punk, anarchist of color, whatever. And I'm like, no, I believe in mutual aid. I believe that most of the time it's the stuff outside the system that does work, as exhausted and underfunded or non-funded as we are to take care of each other. And I also believe that we are all up in the state, or that the state is all up in us, and that it is really important for us to hit it with everything we've got and be creative, because we are creative people. So when thinking about, okay, what are we going to do? I think of the diversity of tactics of everything that disability and transformative justice brings to us. And I'm going to jump back and say I forgot to define disability justice, and it's a movement that was, it's been around forever. We came up with a name for it 15 years ago. That's a movement led by and for disabled, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and or queer and trans folks. That Patty Byrne, who's one of the people who created it, Haitian, Japanese, disabled revolutionary, says lives in the cliffhangers of the disability rights movement. Because she's like, disability rights, done so many things. A lot of it's been legal. And she's like, You know, all of the civil rights law for disability rights that disability rights push through is crucial. And there's also those of us that are in places of struggle that the law doesn't cover, right? Like in the States, it's like, well, the ADA is great, the Americans with Disabilities Act. What happens if there's no ramp to get in the building and you don't have money to sue? You know, what happens if you can't get on state disability? So many questions. And she's like, we need both. We need the laws and we need the community, the relationship building, the survival strategies, the mutual aid. We need all of it. As somebody who's been involved as someone who's neurodivergent for, like I said, since I was a little bitty 21-year-old, I am so grateful to the work of mad lawyers and activists to fight for every single human rights law that says that we have a right to refuse forced treatment, that we have a right to define our reality and our future as mad people inside and outside prisons and psychiatric institutions, who've been fighting against the curve to get our rights out there. And I also lift up our communities and relationships as mad people, our storytelling, our giving each other pills, our helping each other get off the pills, our lifting up that it is okay to think and live differently and to not be like everybody else. And I want to lift up, as many of you know, one current example is the work of challenging the BC Mental Health Act, which is going on right now, where this is a law that, authorizes detaining facilities to discipline patients in detention with no limits and no review process. There's no criteria governing the use of restraints and seclusion, so people can be tied up for hours and days. There's no patient rights to access counsel, receive visitors, to have somebody take off your clothes who's your same sex, to be able to communicate with people outside the world. We need to fight this. We need to fight this with everything we have. We need to lift up the work of psych survivors who've been doing this work since the 70s. We need to also create peer respite places and places of safety where people who are having a hard mental health time can go and get care that doesn't mean being tied down to a bed for a month without any right to see your family, have gender affirming clothing, or have a lawyer, or have any of the stuff that we need. I'm thinking a lot. I mean, there's so many places I could go, and I'm just going to check my time real quick. Okay. I think about like the work of, radical disabled lawyers, like that I often know about, and I'm like, oof, they're all so busy. I don't know if there's time to write their work down half the time. But I think about people like Carrie Ann Lucas, who was described as just another fat Latinx femme power chair using lawyer, adoptive mother of four, for Jesus, that she had a t-shirt that said that, who after she was told that because she was disabled she couldn't adopt her kids in Colorado, she went to law school and she created the law in Colorado that defends the right of disabled people to parent, and adopted 4 kids who have what are labeled as severe disabilities out of institutions and raised them. I think about all of the lives and disabled families her legal work, her care work, her love work has made happen. I think about my friend Shane Newmeyer, who's a trans, white, disabled lawyer who's actually living in my hometown of Worcester, Massachusetts, fighting to get disabled and mad people out of conservatorship every day in a working class Rust Belt town. I think of everybody who is fighting these battles right now that are really the battles that our lives are based on, that whether it's in the legal system, whether it's in the union hall, or whether it's in the streets, or all three, we're basically just like fighting for our right to be free. I think about the language that so many people I know are talking about in the movement, especially since COVID, about using the framework of medical abuse and thinking about what reparations would look like for those of us who have been denied care, who have been told that we don't deserve care, whose lives have been shortened, who have lost loved ones because of ableism and racism and medical gatekeeping. I think of all the creativity it's taken everybody in this virtual room to get to where we are. And I think of all the ways we can keep using our creativity to hack the system, to hack the laws, to push back against the laws, to say that the laws are invalid. And I think in the middle of it all, I just want to go back to the importance of remembering our dreams and remembering the big wild dreams of freedom that we started out with, that sometimes it's really easy wherever we are to get to a place of being like, that's too much. You can't expect too much. You know, if you get a little bit, it's okay. I think that now more than ever, we have to remember to fight for everything because the stakes are just too high. Um, what did I leave out and where am I at? Okay, I've got 3 minutes left. I some other things I want to throw in, and then I'm going to end with a poem. I think a lot about carceral models of disability and legal models of disability, where right now, you know, I mean, one of the core precepts of disability justice, which is one of those things just everyone goes, wait, hold on, tell it to me again, is the idea that there's always been disabled people. We've always been good as we are. We're not, there's not one good white, cis, able bodied, skinny male body, and the rest of us are just these kind of rejects at the dented can store. There's a reason we are here as disabled and autistic and neurodivergent and deaf people. And we have the brilliance that actually the world needs and that everybody needs. I'm not just saying that, I believe that. And I think about how, you know, one of the many fun ways that legal systems and carceral systems bump up into disability is there's this idea of show us your papers, that I can't just be autistic because I know I am. You know, I've got to go to a doctor or somebody and have them approve me, right? I think about my friends who were born disabled who have to go every year to their state disability, you know, who's he, what's he, and be like, yep, I've still got cerebral palsy. And I think about that the way it makes so many people I've encountered in my life be so afraid to claim disability because they're like, can I just be this because I think I am? I think about when I was running a disabled student union at the University of Washington, and the students would be afraid to come in because they'd be like, wait, I don't have papers. And I think about what happens when we take away those definitions, you know, those law books, the DSM, all of that stuff that's been placed on us, and we take back our power to articulate ourselves for ourselves as who we are, to claim our knowledge, our brilliance, our gifts, and to use everything we know about love and care and relationship building and survival and resilience and creativity to make the next world. Super casual. Let me see. Okay, I've got 1 minute left, so I'm gonna read you a poem. And it's called Psychiatric Survivors Know. Psych survivors know, whisper to you in immigration lockup right now, evade capture, run, find a corner. There's always one they're not looking at, even when it's only in your brain. Repeat to yourself, you're still human no matter how much they treat you otherwise. Maybe you will go to the other world because of what you endure. That doesn't make you less. There is dignity in flying. Bathrooms are your friends, even if it's just 5 minutes, even if it's no door. I wish we didn't have to keep whispering, enduring, being invisible, disassociate, but these are the ways we organize in ways they never know how to see. We bank on their incompetence, their petty squabbles over jurisdiction, find each other over and over again. We are here in the sky, in persistence, memory, dream. We know that there is always an after. Survive for it. The last thing I'll say is my friend Stacey said, she was like, big disability justice dreams got me this far and I'm going to keep banking on them. And I really want to really encourage you to keep remembering your dreams and bank on them in the face of everything in the system that tells you that there's something so much more sensible that you should listen to. Thank you so much. We will continue to make freedom. We will continue to survive. Thank you all so much for your beautiful, brilliant labor in making this next world. And thank you for having me.